Great. Hello, everybody. The cat here? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the broadcast. Uh, welcome to the broadcast. Okay. All right. There we go. Let me see. We're here for the first week of April, Thursday Nighter. And our new feature, player profile, is featuring Eddie Wasserman. Okay, hold on, let me see here. All right, there we go. Okay, and so we're looking at Eddie Wasserman, and he's probably, well, currently the most active player on the Minnesota chess circuit. He still has a ways to go before he catches up with the legendary Dan Vojay, I'm guessing, but currently he's right up there. In fact, I think a year or two ago, a couple years ago, he was featured as one of the most active players in Chess Life. One of his many deserved nicknames is Everyday Eddie. He's played, I believe, about 3,250 rated games so far, which is quite a few. He reached his peak rating recently of 2099, so just under 2100, and I have no doubt that he'll be getting to the 2100 and beyond relatively soon. He's had quite a few good performances, as can be imagined with his high rating, including quite a few upsets. He's beaten Matt Dahl, Andrew Hoy, Brian Campbell. He's had draws with Andrew Titus, Lyndon Lee. He's also nailed your co-host more than a couple of times, each of them rather painful. I think he's beat me 4 times at least. And he's had some, if you look at his game history, he's had some losses against elite GMs, which is a sign that he's played outside the club and plays in national events. Eddie, besides his chess playing, is also an important member of our Castle community. He's a Castle board member, helps the club by coordinating events and also helping with the web portal. He's maybe we'll switch back to his chess though. Michael, what are your impressions of Eddie's chess?
Yeah, my kind of when I think about Eddie and his chess, my one biggest takeaway is definitely his just what a kind of a variety player he is. I know he would say in his own words that he doesn't, he never plays one set opening like I and a lot of other players do. He plays pretty much everything under the sun, which it makes it hard for me, and I'm sure other players, to play against him because you don't know what to expect. He might like pull out some crazy opening you've never seen before and make it work. So he's a very very, very fun player to play against because you don't know what to expect from him, but very strong player. I have a -5 score against him, so he's always been a difficult opponent for me. And the funny thing about Eddie is since he plays so much, he's pretty much everybody's most played player at the club. Um, so that's it's pretty funny when you ask someone's most played player, you can pretty much already guess who that is.
Yes, it is. It is interesting, and of course, maybe it's a sign of the changing of the guards because I had mentioned earlier Dan Vojay, who for a bulk of us of a certain age is our most frequent opponent, and Eddie's taking on the mantle, I suppose, of that
Yeah, it,
position.
precisely. Yeah.
No, Eddie is so if you're the sort of person who wants to do specific preparation for a game, Eddie is the worst kind of player because he plays everything. Um, and so for me, it's become easy because I just figure there's no point in preparing because that's energy I could be spending doing other things like I don't know checking my Facebook or whatever. It's be probably more productive than preparing for Eddie. He has actually the other. I think it was this weekend at the closed. I saw a position I hadn't seen for a while, the infamous Gothenburg variation of the Najdorf. And I can't really remember offhand what color he was playing, but the fact that he would go into that just seemed crazy to me. I'm lazy when it comes to chess openings, and I don't want to work that hard.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Very.
Today he's playing against okay. Today he's playing against Jonah Butler. And so we have a Rosolimo type position coming up, which I suppose one can think of as a bit of a reverse Nimzo in some ways. And so, Michael, do you play the Sicilian?
I do not actually. I've been encountering it more lately because I've started playing E4 again, but I've never played C5. So I was actually going to ask you, I don't know how familiar you are with this line, but how common is the Rook B1 that Eddie played? Because it looks like a little bit of an odd move.
Yes, it does seem like an odd move.
It must be theory though.
And I'm not that theoretically versed in this line either. But my understanding is that D3 is normal, and after Rook B1, B8, I think F4 might be, yeah,
Yeah, it
F4 here.
looks very natural, so kind of plays
Yes,
itself.
exactly. And so I don't know whether Eddie played Rook B1 with the idea that he wanted to move his bishop somewhere. Although in general, I think White shouldn't be in a hurry to move his bishop yet because you don't know where it's going to go to yet.
Yeah.
But Rook B1 doesn't necessarily. Okay, I should be careful saying it doesn't spoil anything. I'm not an actual E4 player, and I play openings that allow you to get away with some loss of time. I would think that F4, just getting on with it seems to be important. I don't know if delaying it for a move is critical or not. And so we get to here, and maybe that's the other thing. Maybe Eddie had no intention of playing F4
Mm-hmm.
and was hoping for this.
Hmm.
Okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, Rook B1 makes sense, I guess, just because, like you said, he wants to be able to move the bishop, and not have to worry about rook b8. I mean, b6. Do you
Yes,
really want to have to play it? I mean, if your bishop's already moved and you're not going to fee and shadow it on b2, then
yes,
um, then you'll definitely want rook b1. And looks like his
yeah,
bishop has a pretty good location now on f4. So
quite right. And actually, I guess also the timing is interesting, right? So after d3 has been played and rook
mm,
d8 is played, do you really want to play d3 and then just have all your queenside dark squares looking iffy? It might be
but
playable, but yeah, so maybe that is another justification for that. So bishop d6 happens, and exchange off, and e5, which is quite nice. So now the knight gets into e4 with tempo. And I think this
yes,
is a
look,
feature, another feature. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, this looks really good for white now. That the knight's going to be a beast all game. I can't even see a quick way to exchange it off. So um,
Yes,
obviously, it looks like you can't play knight takes c5 yet because of queen a5. There's some b4, but like rook takes b4 lines in there. So, but still, just a pretty good position where you want the two knights here.
exactly. And and now he's going to be able to get his other knight into c4. So yeah, I think White can't complain about the results of the opening here.
Yeah, now the black king will never be able to castle. You just have better pieces, better king safety. Not an immediate win or anything that I can see, but just a long-term static advantage for Eddie.
Exactly. It's the kind of move that the old timers would say, yeah, White can play for the next 100 moves, and Black just has to suffer.
Yeah,
So, and I guess I should comment on. So, Queen f3 is attacking the pawn on c6, but more importantly, is getting the queen active. Now the rooks are also um, connected, and it's not easy to see, if at all possible, how White defends his c5. Sorry, Black defends his c5 pawn.
yes, that's you don't even I don't see an obvious way to defend it at all. You can, I mean, rook b5 looks terrible. I mean, at very least you could probably just play a4, kick
Exactly.
that rook away. So I think Eddie will just pick up that doubled c pawn there.
Like if we go back a little bit, I think there's an important moment here. So after d5 is played, and then knight f3, Black has to think very carefully about the pros and cons of moving that pawn to d4.
Exactly. Yes. But
And yeah, I mean, it's nice to be able to kick out an opponent's piece with the pawn, but you always have to be worried about the space that's left behind. And by playing d4, it doesn't seem obvious at this moment, but the e4 square is now difficult for Black to fight for. And well, why is that a problem? It turns out that through tactics, it's immediately a problem, right?
yeah. So I wonder if you could look at the timestamps. Does it show how quickly he played bishop d6?
Yes. So after bishop f4, he played. So it took 3 minutes,
Okay. So
three
I
three and a half minutes. Yeah.
because in hindsight, it's probably ugly, but maybe you have to go like, I don't know, rook b7, or what would you suggest here? Because obviously bishop d6 can't be the right move. You're gonna have to admit,
Yes.
okay, you have to admit like d4 wasn't so good on my part. Um, Probably because he just missed this whole bishop f4, bishop d6 line. It's just bad for him. So maybe he has to go rook b7. I mean, if you go to the corner again, your rook's gonna be stuck for a while.
Yes. No, I think the rook should be moving rather than so either rook b7, rook b6, even rook a8 if you're intending to play a5 might be
Yes.
sort of iffy. But I think it's important. So the c5 pawn, again, these things don't seem obvious at the moment
Hmm.
because, well, how are you going to attack the c5 pawn? The c5 pawn's only convenient defender is the bishop on d6. And so even though some people might say, well, it's a worse bishop than white's bishop because the pawns are dark squares, it's also defending an important pawn.
Yes. Yeah. And I think this d4 move brings up something interesting because I think my old coach told me this or something, but um like the three most areas of chess you want to spend the most time on are areas of like king safety, obviously like okay, when to castle, when not to castle, which side to castle on. And sometimes, maybe I don't have to castle, maybe the queens are off the board. So king safety, um and then like any exchanges, obviously, because that dramatically changes the game, especially once you get up to a higher level like these players. Bishop for knight is obviously equal points, but might not be a even trade, and all these players know this. But then the third thing is right, pawn structure. It's another one of those things
Yes,
you can't take back. Um, so those are like the three things in chess you can't take back, and like you said, it was tough. D4 was an obvious move that it's kind of one of those things that a couple moves down the ladder, you're like, oh, this is no good for me, but it wasn't obvious. But it is one of those, oh, you can't change it. It's pawn structure. So
exactly. Yes, that's a very good point that, especially if you're going to make, and it might not seem that important at a certain phase in one's chess journey, but every pawn move is a bridge burning moment.
yeah,
And I think if we think about it that way, maybe we sit on our hands a bit more, right? Um, so yeah, this and all of a sudden Eddie is okay. There's an argument: should he have tried taking the pawn on a2? I don't think that ends well. The queen will waste time trying to get back, and so looking at this move here, queen here, I think after knight c4, black has to run back immediately. And then there's an extra tempo and things like this. This is just really
very
bad.
bad.
Even if yeah. So black wisely refrained and tried to get a piece into the game, but then he loses casting rights. And yeah, now the position is just pretty ugly.
Yeah, I'm looking at that D4, looking at that D4 pawn. If you can somehow pick that up now, I don't know, like bringing the knight back to B3, bringing the queen to E4 seems like a natural try. Might not work right away, but somehow picking off that pawn now.
Yes. And I should just mention in passing, Eddie is giving his opponent an offer he must refuse, which is trying to take this pawn here because of this.
Mm, nice tactic.
So, which he actually does, which he actually.
Oh,
So, um, let's see. Let's go back here. So, he actually falls for it. and now in addition to the pawn, he now has an extra exchange. And this is a difficult moment in general. So the pawn on b4 is hanging. Well, it's underprotected, and black has a difficult choice. If he tries to protect it, as he does here, he then loses some of his ability to fight back, because now the queens are off the board.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not clear how he's going to get counterplay now, if at all. So, okay, I think we're at the...
Can we catch the live position?
Yeah, let's see. I think we're at the live position now. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was tough because he probably did just blunder that tactic, the knight fork. But I mean, if you look back at that position, he was on the knight was just going to take the pawn if he avoided it, and then he'd be down 2 pawns. And
Yeah.
in a funny way, this almost looks more. It's probably still worse. Computer wouldn't like it, but it almost looks like it prolongs the game more.
Yes.
And sometimes chess is like
that.
That. The best move. You know, you might not play the best move, but it's the move that prolongs the game more. It doesn't sound logical, but I feel like just sometimes, from my experience, that's what it seems like.
Yes. Yeah, you want to find moves that give you not necessarily the best, but the most realistic chances of fighting, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're behind. You don't want to... If you play the best moves when you're behind, I mean, the most objectively best move is often the move that leads you inexorably to a loss, right? And so you want to create moves that, I don't know, toss sand in the face of the opponent, whatever. Just create confusion. And yeah, this seems to, at least with a barrier on b4, with b4, c5, d4, it's not as easy for the white rooks to show that they're actually boss. So
precisely.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's take a look. Let's see where we are. Okay, last week I decided to save Robert's game to last, but this week maybe we'll go to that next, because it's already over and he and Connor are probably watching the other games at this moment. Let's see what happens here. So
It's kind of, I'm not familiar with Connor because I haven't I've never played him OTB actually. Is he exclusively a D4 player, or what do you know what he usually plays?
I'm not as familiar with his games. I think he's mostly a D4 player, but I'm just guessing here.
Okay.
Then again, there are E4 players who will occasionally produce in London, because London is fairly easy to learn and play competently. So I think the one game I played against him, I might have had the white pieces. So yes, I'm not exactly sure. This line is interesting, the so-called copycat for black. This is also an interesting approach. So there, and then queen c2.
Looks like they're already out of book.
Yes.
I could be wrong, but this doesn't look like a normal London.
No.
And I'm not even familiar with the London, but
no, it is not a normal London. I mean, so by playing bishop c5 immediately, now you have this vis-a-vis, and there are many ways to handle it. Black could have gone back. Black could have played 94. Queen d7's a normal move, and now knight e5 is threatened, and so black decides to deal with the tension once and for all, allowing this somewhat unconventional pawn structure, which this is not a weak doubled pawn. for one thing, it's the pawn on d3 is doing important work, keeping the knight from jumping into e4. White has also gotten a half-open c file for himself, but it's not to say that white is better. It's just a different kind of position, and definitely not what many people consider a boring old London, right?
Yeah.
So
And that's
so
probably exactly
a3,
what Robert wanted.
yes, and dare I say, Connor too, because I don't think Connor likes playing boring chess either. I
Mm.
think he likes having things uh, unbalanced. So okay, so knight h5 is interesting.
I'm guessing there's rook c8 tactics if you take that pawn.
Yes, and so let's try and work that out. If bishop takes the pawn right away, and then rook c8, is there a good? Oh, there's knight c3 blocking the c file, and so there aren't any
Mm.
decent discoveries on the c
Yeah.
file.
And come to think of it, even if you don't play knight c3, the rook's not
Oh, the
defended.
rook is
So
yeah,
so I don't.
exactly.
Maybe that was just an outright blunder of that pawn.
It seems like it. Let's see, how much time did Robert take on knight h5? So about a minute.
And yeah, and especially playing knight h5, it only more makes the opponent play bishop takes c7. So he probably just missed it.
Yes, I think he just missed it.
But I
And
mean, the Elbin H files makes for a little bit of compensation.
yes, but it doesn't seem like it's enough.
Yeah.
It seems like, and now he gets e4 in, which is another important part of discussing this pawn structure is the opportunity to play e4, and then you get to choose between ed5 or e5. And I think until you know exactly which works best, it's probably a better approach to leave the pawn structure as is in the center until you know you're getting an advantage out of it.
Yeah, that's very wise. Yeah.
You know, and now um, White has his E and D pawns on the squares that God intended them to be on, right?
Mhm.
So he must be feeling happy here. Um, it's oh, okay. Taking advantage of so it's funny, right? The rook lands on c8 to create X-ray potential X-ray attacks against White's queen, and meanwhile the tables are turned and White is taking advantage of the pin against the undefended rook.
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty comical there.
Yes. So capture and then create two. Yeah, that's a Robert move. So we just gotta latch out and see what what kind of good trouble we can create.
Yeah. I wonder why he didn't take back on e5. Is that?
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So
Oh,
rook
there's a
should
fork on
take the
e7. Okay.
yes.
Uh,
Yep.
Tough.
There's a fork on e7. And in fact, oh,
Oh, no. Well, yeah, and then you still can't play knight d4 because yeah, well,
oh yeah, the whatchamacallit is pinned, right?
the
So
rook is
oh
pinned, and
okay.
I guess you could take that other rook too, but yeah.
Yes. But he decides to keep things simple. Okay, that's an interesting approach. What exactly is wrong with f4?
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. offhand. Looks like you go for that. Um,
Mm-hmm. Unless is there some trap after knight of three?
oh yes, yes. There. Oh no.
Oh,
I thought he had for a sec there, I thought he had knight e7 and could sack the queen, but on h7 and go for checkmate. But the bishop guards e7, so it doesn't quite work.
yes, bishop guards e7. So, but knight here. What is that threatening? Oh, okay. This is just um. This is
Don't
one of
have one.
those flaggable situations for unsportsmanlike conduct. Um, the knight really has no good retreat square, right? I mean, it has to go to a square where it can also defend the bishop because there's queen d5 on top.
Yes, yes. So it looks like I think the best you can do is like queen c6 take the knight, and then g5 is the only way black can probably get anything out of it.
Yes. And meanwhile, white has also gotten exchange of a couple more pieces, so then they're not complaining about their lot in life. Just to put that on the board. So queen c6.
Yeah, and if this was the reason Connor didn't play, what was it? He played King G2
f4.
instead. That's a pretty deep concept for him to see. That's pretty smart.
Yes. Yes, I agree. That's so this is what happened so in the actual game, this happened. So he chose this move order. And I'm wondering, okay, he does go for it. Okay, so queen d5, e6. I was actually thinking about knight e6 here, but um
Yeah, 96, bishop b7. Don't see a
yeah, there's no fit, there's no
there's no immediate win.
yeah, because the bishop's covering d8. So e6, oofta. So I guess at this point it's now a mopping up. Well, it would be a mopping up if white didn't have mate and one now. So
Yeah,
okay. Well, that's an interesting game as usual.
yeah,
Um,
pretty smooth game from Connor, I would say. Um,
yes.
just kind of slightly better position out of the opening. He got the big center, got the double D pawns, and really used it to his advantage. And then I feel like where the game really probably the turning point was probably I mean knight h5 and just probably missing that the c7 pawns hanging.
Yes. And then involving himself in a self pin unwittingly, where
Yeah,
all of a sudden his his seemingly developed pieces aren't really developed
yeah.
effectively. So okay, so let's take a look. Where do we go next? Let's go to Jason versus Miles. And so Jason is white to this encounter. And he starts with d4. And Miles goes with his accelerated Queen's Indian approach.
Yeah, I'm very unfamiliar with the Queen's Indian, but I've played Milo quite a few times now, so I'm getting more familiar with it. But I
Okay.
he's one of the rare players in that at least that I've played who plays this pretty much all the time. So it's good to get experience against it. Do you have a lot
Yes.
of experience playing against the Queen's Indian?
Playing against the Queen's Indian, not so much because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of lazy with my openings. And so I often take the shortcut of the Torre
Mm,
um, rather than go against the Queen's Indian, just because the Queen's Indian can be a tough nut to crack. Not that the Torre is a winning opening out of the gate, but it allows for a bit more uh, flexibility. It's not as theoretically intense as a Queen's Indian can get.
hmm.
Now, the move order played here. So as I mentioned here, so the more normal move order would be e6 here. And then white has an opportunity to choose between g3, knight f3, knight c3. B6 is an accelerated approach, and I don't know enough to tell you where black profits from playing b6 first. But the way the game went, it ended up transposing to a normal Queen's Indian at this moment. So a more normal way of getting into this would be d4, knight f6, e4, e6, knight f3, here, here. And so the game got there, but through b6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, so here. And now we get here, and my understanding of the Queen's Indian is, so this is like the most standard way of playing it. A lot of times you'll see players, when they're using the more traditional move order, take the opportunity to play here first.
Hmm.
And the idea is to make white commit to a decision as to how they're going to defend the c4 pawn, and every move white has here has a slight disadvantage. It's not like black is winning or anything, but white needs to make some sort of concession and understand the nature of the concession they're making so that they can plot the rest of their game accordingly. Anyway, fortunately, we didn't have to go into that.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting though, all these sidelines you can get from chess. You know,
Yes,
it's all these slightly delicate moves. You know, you have these general opening principles like do not move a piece twice, but what makes a lot of people like chess is that the exceptions to the rules. That hey,
exactly.
sometimes you need to go bishop a6, then pull it right back to b7, and that's completely fine.
Yep. Or like I think you play it too, the bishop b4 approach against the Catalan, or is that
I play that, yeah, yep,
yeah. Yeah, so similar sort of thing, right? You play the bishop b4, force
exactly.
white to make an uncomfortable decision, and then force white to figure out what he's going to do about his clumsy bishop on d2.
Yeah, it's a great
So
example.
yeah, so here, okay, so white is developing what seems to be a decent position in terms of space, but it's still going to be hard to. I mean, it's not going to be trivial to develop an advantage. I think white's plan is likely going to be advancing the pawns on the queen side, maybe b3, a3, b4, c5 at some moment is a guess.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Miles just didn't play f4 right away. Maybe that's not good. I'm sorry, f5, but
So in
if
this,
from like yeah after I guess what was it a5 bishop e3,
mhm.
maybe it's a bit maybe you can just f5 takes, rook takes, bishop h3, maybe he didn't want something like that. Maybe it's a
So
bit too
this is
ambitious.
interesting.
Yeah, it
So
might be a
here,
bit too
here,
ambitious, but because if white's plays on the queen side, um it looks like black's quicker on the king side to me, at least with the play. So maybe you
mhm.
just full send right away.
So I think part of the problem here might be, so, well, you can't play bishop h3 first because the knight's hanging, right?
Oh,
Um,
true. Yes, the knight. Yeah, good point.
but we could play here. And now we're threatening bishop h3, bishop e6. We're also hoping to put our knight on e4. And they can't prevent, well, they shouldn't try to prevent knight e4 with knight f6 because now the rook is looking pretty clumsy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the rook has to come to h5, but then bishop here. And yeah, this is, I think white might be able to develop a bit of an initiative here, maybe. But yeah,
Yeah,
f5,
it's very convoluted for sure.
yes. No, f5 is an active move. The problem for black might be, does he have his pieces in position to take advantage of it? And I think that might be why he decided instead to get his bishop back onto the right
Mm,
side of the board before
yeah,
playing f5.
yes, that does make more sense. And knight d2 makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
And so here we have it interesting. Okay, well, that looks like a way to solve that problem. And now here,
Definitely would I initially I would have thought to put the bishop there, but
yeah, that was my thought as well, is play the bishop here. Um, and uh, and now if they capture, then you put the knight there, or you even bring the bishop, the rook there. But I would think that this actually increases white's problems to some extent, at least tactically, right? He now has to spend a move to get his queen out of the way. Oh, we just need to consider it because the knight isn't doing anything right now, as long as the pin is there.
yeah. What I liked about bishop e4 is, I mean, obviously you always look at forcing moves first. And bishop e4 is
Mm-hmm.
definitely a forcing move because you're
Yes.
making black make a decision promptly. And if you take, like you said, I mean, the knight comes in, and then that's just I
Yeah.
think most people would prefer the knight in this position. It looks like a good knight versus bad bishop. Not to say the
Exactly.
bishop, not to say the bishop on e7 is horrible, but those pawns around it aren't making it look too good.
Yeah.
And
The,
I
pawn,
mean,
the pawns around it are making it look like it's got a number of twin siblings. Yeah.
yes, like, so I wonder if instead of if he had played bishop e4, I was thinking maybe you can try g6.
Yes. And so this becomes an interesting position to look at because I was looking at this here and trying to decide um, what what White's best approach would be, and I somehow suspect maybe an idea with like rook e2, rook f1, f4 might be a plan to open the position on White's terms. So something like, I don't know, rook e2 seems clumsy though.
Yeah, it looks fine. What I like the look of actually is like a knight f1, knight e3 reroute, and really
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
putting more pressure on
On
f5.
f5
And I
and
think
trying to
that
convince.
yeah, I think that forces black to take. Um,
So let's see. So let's say bishop g5 now.
mm.
Um,
I guess now if we played, he's getting rid of that black bishop, but
yes. but we're also getting our pieces. So it's one of those things that reminds you how chess is a game of give and take. So say I decide, I'm just going to go ahead and play knight e3, and you get rid of the bishop with that move, right? Now, black can claim, well, I avoided a knight versus bishop ending, and then white can claim, well, you no longer have the bishop pair. So how you like them apples? And it's not clear to me who wins out there. Maybe
I'm guessing just from more an objective standpoint, that's probably why Jason didn't like bishop e4 instead of knight. He played knight e4. He probably didn't like bishop e4 just because of g6 would be my guess. How
yes,
quickly did
that
he?
makes sense.
And he played bishop e4 in. Don't know how quickly he
He
played
played,
bishop e4.
yeah, he played 94 almost immediately.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Oh, that's gonna hurt.
I think we're going from interesting to blunder real fast.
Yes, that's gonna hurt. So so basically, he's just given up a piece. Well, for a couple of pawns, I suppose. But yikes. And yeah, in this kind of position, I trust Miles to have the tactics on lockdown.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Very nice. Oh no! So he has to bail out with a check. Okay. Yeah, this one
Ideal
interesting.
situation. Ideal situation for Miles where he was able to trade off all the pieces promptly after winning the material.
Exactly. And now it's now it's just basically okay. So this is a very nice idea. Basically, he's starting to play bishop f5 next move, and that is an offer that white cannot refuse. If he tries to escape, say with bishop here, and then bishop here, and then retreat, now the a2 pawn is done. And then the a3 pawn will promote. So okay, that was a nice game by Miles. A nice he took advantage of the opportunity that was given him. Um, and that's all we could ask of ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, where shall we go? Jeremy Keeler versus Srijan Vazdiarathan. Okay, this final position is interesting. Let's see how we got there. The Trumpovsky. So you're I think a decent blitz player. You might know that one of the best bits of prep against a known Trumpovsky player in Bullet is e6. waiting for bishop g5, and then thank you very much. Let's get ready for the next game. Okay, that's Bullet. This is real chess we're talking about now. So knight here, bishop d5, and take. Hmm. So if we stop right here, if this game gets to an end game, white's chances are probably preferable based on the pawn structure. However, black has the bishop pair and might be able to create enough harassment that black doesn't, white doesn't get to enjoy his pawn structure advantage.
Hmm. I like fan shadowing the bishop. That looks like a nice idea. It's a
Yes,
nice long diagonal to get onto. No pawns in the way. Take advantage of black not having their E and D pawns.
exactly. And it's also on the business side of things in case white decides to push his pawns, to, like e45, for example. So this might be a bit careless,
Yeah, it looks like you can just take that knight on c3.
which is what he did. So he
Hmm.
gains a pawn. And I like queen e5. In these sort of things, in these sort of positions, you definitely want, you shouldn't be shy about a hit and run approach. Um, Basically, you grab the pawn and then you make sure your position is sound before you go into any other adventures. And so that's what queen a5 does by getting the queen back to c7 to protect the b pawn, and now he can hopefully go about the business of developing the rest of his army. Nice attempt.
Yeah, it looks like he's definitely getting his compensation in.
Yes. Now it all depends on how he approaches the next move. So rook there, putting pressure on the knight on c6. There's a pin. Black wisely gets out of the pin. And the question is, can white put more pressure on c6 before black can get out of the other pin along this diagonal?
Yeah. Well, I think the most forcing line proves that black can get out, right? Because if you like, I don't know, rook c2, rook c7, rook ac1, rook ac8, looks like black's escaping.
Maybe. Let's see.
And
Can
or even, wait a sec. Actually, you have to be careful. Another line I was looking at, bishop h3 might be good, but also in that instead of bishop h3, can you go queen b4, queen b5, excuse me, and then
oh yeah, queen b5.
if the
Oh
knight
yeah, because
moves
it's a back rank. Nice,
exactly, yeah.
nice.
So yeah, this
So
could be
yeah,
interesting to see what happened.
that's what happened in the game. So here it gets out of the way. Knight b5 immediately, and so ah, so it seems like the tables have turned in a way.
Yes. Hmm. Just nice for white.
Yeah, very nice for white, and black
Wait,
has to try extraordinary measures to keep his position afloat and also try and get more. Because
definitely like.
g5, yeah,
Yeah, I definitely like Black's plan though, planning a pawn on g4. Looks like
yes,
he at least has to go for that.
exactly. And I think that move might be an unfortunate one, the rook d1. It would seem to me like you want to do your best not to allow black to get the seventh rank, but maybe it's not that important. Okay, now things are yeah. The rook back doesn't improve white's position.
I think what this probably shows is that yeah, rook d2 just in the first place was the wrong idea. Because you're not really infiltrating on the d file. I think first if you just play rook ac1 instead of rook d2, now you're controlling
Yes,
both. You're controlling both files, and black's not getting any counterplay.
yes. So after this, here. So actually, king f1 is bad. I mean, it's not. There's no real benefit to it. What's the queen? What's the? I guess is he trying to avoid? Maybe that's it. He's trying to avoid a potential fork on f3, and his rook and knight would be within the range of that fork. Maybe that's what he's thinking. But black still hasn't shown how he's going to force the queen off the diagonal. And so at this moment, instead of king f1, I think your idea of just both open files now have a white rook on them. Now what is black going to do?
Mhm.
You know? But even after playing king f1, and then this happens, and now I think that might be what he was hoping. Maybe that's what he's looking at. He's looking at, I need to be able to counter on the C file. And so he brings his rook back to try and counter on the C file when that might have been better the move before. And now black has the initiative. He's the one forcing white around. And this is actually a nice illustration of why the initiative is such an important tool. So on the surface, white is material up. But in reality, black is material up because his knight's doing something, and the rook on a1 at the moment isn't contributing and won't be able to contribute to the game for at least a move or two. So at this moment, black has an advantage in material, in effective material. And ouch.
Looks like yeah.
Oh man. This is just nice. I like that. I like that. Jeremy is showing that he's not taking no mess. I've got my material advantage. Now I'm going to hoover all the pieces off the board, and then you don't have any counterplay. You can't prevent me from just winning as I please. So, okay, that was a good one from Jeremy. Let's see. Here we got Nathan versus Ronan. And so Grunfeld.
Oh, I was gonna say I used to get a lot of Grunfelds back when I used to play D4, and
Mhm.
I never once even thought about playing knight A4. Never once.
So 94 is actually an interesting. There's actually a decent idea behind 94, and trying to remember his name. He was an Armenian player who liked the unorthodox, and he had played this a couple of times. And basically, the idea is white wants to get e4 in without allowing the knight exchange.
Mm,
So if So, for example, if black were to play, I don't know, let's choose a random move like a6. Now you get e4 in, and after the knight goes back, or wherever it goes, now you have this, and then black doesn't get the pawn structure that they want. So, with a typical Grunfeld, after e4, knight takes, pawn takes, I'd say maybe a later c5, I don't know, knight f3, bishop here. At some point, this is going to happen. And then we're going to be left with 2 against 1 and an open C file, which black likes that setup, that pawn structure setup. So the idea of knight a4 is to try and avoid that.
Yeah, very very interesting concept. I've actually never seen that. Just a little, so
Yes, it
it's
is unorthodox. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. It was not Sargisian, because he's too young to have produced this idea. Because this idea was, I think it was back in the 90s that this guy played it. But okay. And of course, Hoover was alive and well in those days, so he knows of this idea and decided to try it on Ronan. And oh, by the way, I guess I'm going quickly over the moves, but you see that Ronan did not respond to the idea in any specific way, so that now White is able to get his 2-pawn center without allowing the exchange of knights.
mm-hmm. I'm
And
wondering
yeah.
if after queen e2 you can kind of go like a queen c8. Because I know in some it's a little odd to see the knight on a6 with the obviously the previously fianchetto bishop, and I know there's a line that I play in the Queen's Gambit declined, this bishop f4 line, where black takes on c4, bishop takes c4, and then black plays bishop a6, just wanting to exchange off his notoriously not as good, light square bishop for White's good light square bishop in the Queen's Gambit.
Yes.
And then if like takes like we saw in this game, queen e2, what I play is I play queen c8 and then queen b7. Looks a little funky, but your queen gets to a good square. But
You
he
know
chose
what?
knight b8.
Do you mind showing it over the board? Let's go
Yeah.
here. So d4, guide me. So d4, d5,
Yeah, c4
d4,
e6,
e6.
knight c3, knight f6, like bishop f4. May not the exact move order, but we can transpose. Think like bishop e7, knight f3, and like castles, e3, and then like a b6, going for the Tartakova structure, and now like bishop d3, and now you take on c4, bishop takes c4, and then now you throw in bishop a6.
Oh, okay. And now if bishop takes, knight takes, queen e2, then you go queen c8.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And then I'm assuming White plays something like rook c1 or 0-0 here.
Yeah, rook c1, 0-0, e4. They're all options, but black usually just wants to play queen b7 and strike with c5 quickly.
Ah, and then the knight actually is positioned to support c5.
Precisely, yeah.
Ah, okay. So in this case, the knight isn't as dim as it normally would be on the rim.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, I learned something. So, okay, well, let's go. Let's see. So, using that knowledge, so queen c8 here does make some sense, especially if queen going to b7 is also counterattacking the e4 pawn, right?
Hmm.
Forcing, and one of the things black often wants to do in the Grunfeld is hopefully entice white to overextend his pawns. Now, I suppose in this position with the queen on e2, if white does play e6, e5, then black has to be prepared for a later e6, maybe an almost immediate e6, and try and gauge if that's good for him or not. Knight b8 seems a bit compliant, though. It's like setting his development back even further. Yeah,
Pretty
black is, yeah.
pretty equal position here though. Black will still probably try to play c5, but bishop might come to a3, and now it's a little scary.
Yeah, I think actually black is a little bit worse here. I mean, not white isn't winning immediately, but black is not comfortable. Black can't play c5 comfortably with bishop a3 being a definite consideration. If you play c5, you also have to worry about some of his weakened light squares on the queen side. And maybe white could even consider working towards a d5.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Now white is just better.
Rook
If you can't, yeah.
Rook c3, sorry, Rook c6. It's a very mature move, I feel like. I feel like
Yes.
lower rated players, and Nate's for those who don't know Nate, and most people watching probably do, but Nate's like a 2100 level player, and I feel like a lot of lower players would just play like a Rook c2 and just, okay, I'm gonna double up, might as well just put my Rook one square forward. But really stopping that pawn in its tracks, putting the Rook right in front. It looks a little awkward because you're so far into Black's camp, but the Rook can't be kicked away. So might as well make sure and blockade the pawn. So very mature move from Nate.
Yeah. And of course, going into it, and this is where it's really cute. So there is one way to kick the rook out, but that way takes away influence from c5.
He
Right. So
basically
it's
made Black lose a tempo.
exactly. And to get his rook to c2 and c1 in style, right? So he goes here and comes back. And now if he wants to, rook c1 might be a thing. And the queen's protected too. So even if rook c1 is not what he's intending, he could consider d5 now that the queen is protected. So rook c6, I think, was a very, very crafty move. And now black, not wanting to get the grand smooch of death, bursts out with c5. And yeah, this is not comfortable at all
Come to think of it,
for.
did the players miss a tactic there? Can you just actually take that pawn on c5? Take everything and then play rook d8 and then just take the knight on f6?
So here, and then here, you mean?
Yes. And then takes. But aren't you just winning after rook d8?
Yeah, that seems to be more than enough to win with.
Hmm.
Yeah, they missed something there. At least it appears so on the surface. Um, yeah, what exactly is he playing in response to knight takes c5 immediately?
Because you can't even throw in knight takes e4 to get rid of that hanging piece, because then you just play rook c8 intermezzo check. Um,
Yep.
so it looks like that's a free pawn.
Yeah, seems like a free pawn. So Nate missed something there. And how long did Nate take? Nate took about 2.5 minutes on that one. Um, but in defense of Nate, and this is not a real defense because it actually is something that we need to root out of our systems in order to improve. Nate has this position where he just seems so much better. He can win as he pleases. And then once you make the mistake of saying, I've got a one position, um, laziness creeps in. And laziness is the best friend of the defender of a bad position, laziness on the part of the person with a better position. Um, because the person who's worse should be constantly looking for ways to get out of their predicament. While the person who is better, if they decide they can just moonwalk through to a win, they'll be in for a really nasty surprise.
Yes.
But in this case, it didn't matter that much. Fortunately for Nate, this is just. I wonder if if Rook F7 here is that too fancy, or even Knight,
It looks
or
like
even Knight F7. Yeah,
yeah, it looks like Rook F7 actually blunders, right? Because he can't hold
yeah,
on
Rook
to both
F7.
pieces.
Yes, yeah, Rook F7 looks like it's problematic. Although, well, there's Knight F3,
True. True.
but there's Knight F3, and then what is Black playing? I mean, it might be difficult to get the Rook out, but um, I think B7 is available. Yeah, it actually might be difficult for the Rook to get out. So if you go here, where's the Rook? Oh, the Rook can just come out here.
So maybe Queen H6.
So let's see. So let's go here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then Queen H6. And then if you do Queen H6, now it can come out through here.
Ooh, true. True, true. So yeah, I guess this is
But again, I think Nathan figures I've got a winning position. Why complicate things further? And I have sympathy for that viewpoint. Again, complicated positions generally will favor the person who's behind if it's a straightforward winning type position. And so, yeah, I've got some sympathy for that approach, but still, oh, this is interesting. Is there a check on E6 that removes all resistance?
yeah, we're
Am I
definitely right.
missing?
He's definitely slow playing it, but the slow play is
Yeah,
definitely gonna be decisive in his favor. So
yes. Because yeah, 96 seemed to be worth a try there. And okay, I suppose he could play 96 now. He doesn't. Um, 96 seems to be. Am I missing something here?
uh if you take the knight, you're getting checkmated.
Yeah. That's why I'm missing something there. But if he just plays, okay, so that's what is that why he plays A3?
Perhaps, yeah. He's probably just still playing very cautiously, but just
Yes,
knowing he can afford it.
exactly. And it works out well because so what I didn't realize was that um, A3 forces the win of a piece. because black had to play knight g7. No, I'm joking. I don't know that forces a win of a piece, but black decides to play knight g7 and drops the piece that way, and so that's how the game ended. So it's a strange kind of game. If you go back a little bit, well, maybe to the beginning. Here, I think knight f6 has been seen before, and in addition, knight b6 has been seen with this and here, and then here and here, and then you get to eat lunch early. As one way of approaching the position. But okay, it's not a refutation of the Grunfeld. But again, you have to admit it's an interesting idea, and yeah, I can't remember the guy's name. Hopefully it'll come to me at some point. So, all right, let's see what's going on in Dane's game. You haven't looked at this yet. So Daniel Stenke, who I'm told is a newer player to the section, and he's impressed me with his ideas at the end game last month, and he decides to Dane gave him an invitation to go to Petrov, and Daniel says, "Not today, sir." And now we get into a Philidor, right? This is a Philidor now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, okay, this makes sense. I'd imagine that Dane would want to take a more dynamic approach. I don't know. I think that it might be possible for white to play, and maybe the move order isn't exact, but maybe like a bishop e3 approach. A bishop g5 is not bad. It just occurs to me that white might be able to get one of those 150 attack type positions with like a bishop e3, queen d2, 0-0-0, and then launch pawns at black's king side. Maybe you know a bit more about that, but bishop g5 is a well-known move here as well.
Yeah, that looks like something you can do in like the King's Indian structures.
Yes.
Launch your pawns for an attack like that. But it's very interesting that it kind of transposes via this e4 Philidor.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is new. Queen f3 is new.
Yeah, I don't exactly understand that move, but maybe is he hoping for Dane to play like a bishop g4 or something?
Probably. But now, yeah, he forces him to make a decision, and yeah, it's crazy. So after knight d5, what's going on here? No, let's say what happens after knight d5? Maybe knight a6.
Yes. I have a very interesting position without the queens on already. Neither side castled. F.
Maybe it's just a waste. Maybe knight b5 is a wasted move, or maybe knight, because c6 is being threatened now, but maybe c6 is not a real threat yet. Yeah, c6 is not a real threat yet, so maybe we can play 0, 0, 0. Um, and then black will have to find a way to uncoil his position. I don't think it's undoable, but
Yeah,
what do you think?
I slightly prefer white.
Mhm.
Seem like he has slightly better pieces. But I mean, C6 isn't quite working yet, obviously. So I, like I said, the very interesting,
Yes,
rare queens off in E4 by move 11.
yes. Oh, something similar actually happened in the game. Okay, no, he didn't play the knight to b5 first. He played here and then allowed that, and then this comes back. And okay, which is why I kind of like the knight b5 idea. I'm sorry, the knight d5 idea is sidelining that knight to a6, and then hoping you can create something far away from where the knight is. And now the knight has an easier path to the king side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, this guy is putting pressure on Dane.
Mm-hmm. Dane's fighting back,
Yes, as one would expect.
as one would, yeah, as one would.
Dane hardly ever just gives up without a fight.
Now we have an interesting bishops versus knights. Still have
Yes,
7 pawns on the board each. So in that sense, you'd probably prefer the knights, but it's not exactly clear if the knights will prove better because you got like the bishop coming to a6, and that dark square bishop can still come into the game via like the a7 g1 diagonal potentially. So
yes, that is correct. And I mean, the knights have outposts on d5 and f5. One question is, can what can white make out of those outposts? And can he get to the outpost without allowing an advantageous exchange by black? I mean, one of the advantages of having the bishop pair is, or having a bishop versus a knight is usually the bishop, I mean, often, I shouldn't say usually, but often the bishop has control over when and where it exchanges itself for the knight, more so than the other way around. Here, okay, that's seems risky, the c3 move, but
yeah.
maybe he could get away with it. Oh, what?
Yeah, I don't understand c4.
Wait, maybe because so Dane Zagar is a very concrete-minded player. So I'm thinking there must be some reason why the rook can't just withdraw.
Oh, if you go rook e3, the knight gets trapped after c6. And if you go back to rook e2, you play c6 anyways, and then you're taking on c3 because now the knight can't take back.
And attacking the rook immediately.
Yes,
And the rook can't
wow.
catch on d6 because it also has to defend b2. Ah, Dane, Dane, Dane.
I think he's more than fighting back now.
Yes. So And this is really annoying if you're the player of the white pieces because black just came in, took a snack, wiped his mouth, and now is going back to prepare the next wave of the attack.
Yes.
It's and now Dane's going about removing extraneous pieces because now he has a pawn up in a complicated ending, and okay, so this is going to be a really tough one for Daniel to hold. Although I've underestimated Daniel's endgame play maybe too many times, he might have uh, a really good plan in mind to hold things together. But oh, already he's losing his extra pawn.
Oh
Now
no.
let's see though, because there might be a trap here. Um,
Will he fall for it is the question. Oh.
yes, he didn't fall for it, but it seems like there's a trap. If this happens, and here, then there.
Mm-hmm. Very nice endgame technique.
Yes, this would be this is the sort of thing that well, I was going to say as a child would have made me cry, but I think as an adult would still make me cry. Um, so so yeah, so that pawn is effectively poisoned, and I dare say Dane saw that going into this position.
But this might actually still be as maybe it's still holdable for white. As long as I'm just wondering if
Yeah,
you can kind of yo-yo your knight back and forth from like keep it on c4, but maybe like yo-yo it from c4 to e3 or something. And your king's in the ideal spot, and
yep.
black king can never really infiltrate. So this could be a game that doesn't end anytime soon as both players try to fight on, but it might be a draw.
It's weird to say, but as long as white doesn't blunder, black is making zero progress. His king is so well placed on d5, and as long as he doesn't allow, I mean, black there's a it's not a rule, but it's a thing to keep in mind that in many positions, if you don't have a pawn break, you don't have a plan. And in this sort of position, this is one of those positions where, because all of black's pawns are on dark squares, his bishop is worse, is less mobile, and black has no way of chasing white's king away from the really strong d5 square. So white would have to choose to lose this position.
Yeah.
Daniel's done it again. I just this guy.
The funny thing is if anyone's gonna win, it might actually be white.
Yeah, White's the one who has the winning chances. I mean, as long as he doesn't take d6, right? As long as he doesn't take d6 in a foolish way. Um, at this point, White's the only one who has any real winning chances, as far as I can see.
Only if the players are gonna repeat there, but looks like they want to play on.
Yes. All right. Well, I would guess a draw there, but stranger things have happened.
Hmm.
Let's go back to. Oh, we haven't seen um, National Master Babcock versus um, Myron. Let's see here. So let's take a look at this one. All right. So E3 Kale type position. Oh yeah, that's true. Uh, Norman's a is a major Stonewall guy, right? So, so he's getting his favorite setup. Okay, I'm not sure I like. I'm not sure I like uh 94.
Yeah, I agree. It's just you're making your bishop vulnerable to attack.
Exactly. And it's positioned just properly for this move, right? So now there's going to be some tactical issues on the E file. Bang.
Did I miss something, or if you scroll back a couple moves, I'm wondering if after takes, so yeah, takes. Looks like you're getting close to just playing F5.
F5 E4. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but the bishop
F5
checks.
E4 just seems
Ah,
like you're winning a piece. Oh, what is this though? Maybe
yes, there's
that's
that. And then you're worse.
yeah. So okay, so that seems like a nice trappy move.
hmm
Um,
Have you ever played Norm? I'm not familiar with him.
no, I've never played it before. I don't think I've. So usually, if I'm down in the season, I'm playing on the weekends. I don't think I've seen him play on the weekends. I usually see his name on cross tables for like the Thursday nighter. I think some time ago they had I think it was a Wednesday nighter, and I would see his name
Hmm.
there. That was years ago though. But no, I've never played him, so I don't know. What little I know of his game comes from seeing some of them here at the Thursday nighter broadcast.
Yeah.
So it's still a fight, although Black might be getting the better of it now. All his pieces are on really good positions, and he's got pressure on the D4 pawn, which he intensifies correctly with Bishop G4. And at least Norman has got his all his minors in decent positions.
It looks like he's just hanging on here.
Yeah, just managing to make it. Now, was this necessary capturing on D4? I suppose it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I'm surprised he took back with the bishop.
Well, he probably didn't want to be left with an isolated queen pawn.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm not saying that it's a justified decision, but I'm trying to imagine why he wouldn't capture with the pawn. But I think that might be it, that he figured he'd be left um, with a vulnerable pawn
Yeah.
on d4. Hmm. All of a sudden, it seems like White's kind of untangled. Okay. All right. That seems to be a bit much. What's going on here? Ah, he wants to get a knight f2. So this is an interesting idea once you see, okay, he's attacking b2, he's also attacking f2. But fortunately for White, White has a move that defends against both threats. And it also should be noted that the knight can't move willy-nilly because the rook on e8 is undefended. So it might be the case of a trapper being trapped. So he plays rook e6 to make sure that the rook is defended. And with the material up, white is not against exchanges. Uh, okay. Pin it and win it.
Hmm.
That's
Yes.
the mantra.
Yeah, it's kind of ended rather quickly there. I think just
Yes.
maybe just kind of, you know, surmising what Thomas might have been thinking. Maybe he was, because he was kind of pushing there. He was pressing Norm a little bit. So maybe he, once Norm kind of wiggled out of it, maybe he got a little desperate and just decided, okay, I'm going to sack this and hopefully get some counterplay, but didn't quite turn out.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I think he probably just missed rookie two. I think it's as simple as that. He just didn't see rookie two and
That's
assumed he'd get
possible.
more than a, yeah. I assumed he'd get more, good enough for the exchange. And then once rookie two happens, now he's struggling to make things work. And okay, all right. Well, let's see. Let's see what's going on in Eddie's game. Oh, it's done. All right, let's see how that finished. Oh yeah, when we left, Eddie was seemed to be doing pretty well, right?
Yes. Player of the day, Eddie
Yes.
picks up the win.
So when we left, yes, he was in the process of losing that pawn and then losing an exchange. Okay, so oh yeah, so this did have some interest to it because it was going to be interesting to see how what Eddie's technique would be like. Um, I think the weakest part of Eddie's game is probably his end game, and so this is not a. I mean, under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be a trivial position, but it's um, can be
Yeah,
even more of a challenge.
looks like you have to play on the queen side. The king side's all locked up.
Mhm.
Sorry, opposite. King, you have to play on the king side. Queen side's all.
Yes. So this is nice. Now the thing here is White is going to lose his A pawn if Black wants to take it. The question is, can Black afford to take it?
Hmm. So he's letting him take that pawn on a5.
Yeah, so the thing is, it turns out that there's no really great way to take it. So if he takes with the knight, then the knight finds itself pinned against the rook for at least a couple of moves. And White's plan seems to be fairly direct. He moved his rook away from f3 in order to make way for f4 and then f5. And as the knight goes over to the queen side, then it's not protecting against f5. And if Black can get f5 in, then maybe he's able to get both rooks in, and bad things could happen to Black's king. So I think that's what Eddie's operating on.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Now it's just going to be painful. And this is actually kind of cute. So in general, you don't want to. I think it's something I might have picked up from John Bartholomew. I don't practice it as much as I should. But if there's a vis-a-vis like this, if possible, you should probably look for other useful things to do rather than being the one to initiate the exchange. Unless initiating the exchange gives you some concrete benefit. But right now, the rook on a5 isn't going anywhere, right? Um, and so coming back with the other rook means that now you're ready to take the file immediately. While if you had played rook here instead, now black's attacking the c4 pawn. And okay, the position is really bad for black right now, so maybe it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. But for future, understanding that you can kind of gain a tempo by not forcing things is an important sort of lesson. So here, rook gg1 achieves an important thing. The rook isn't going to exchange yet. I mean, you exchange on your own terms, or you force white to exchange. Sorry, black to exchange. And because of black's weak back rank, they feel the need to create some luft. And now after this, yeah. Eddie's going to win this one. And this is crazy. I'm not sure how long the situation has existed. Let's see. But Eddie has actually been ahead on time for much of this game.
That is a shock. Wow.
Yeah. Just looking at this, and okay, yeah, he's been okay. Maybe by the time the position was clearly better for him, it made it easy. But yeah, Eddie's usually scrambling to get his moves in at the end. Okay, so here, after this, it's fairly straightforward. Yeah, now it's just done.
Yeah, I feel like my biggest takeaways from that was he kind of, I think it was wise how he needed to shift to the king side because the queen side was completely locked up. So he rightly addressed that
Yes.
by bringing his king forward. He needed to use the king because both rooks were tied to the a file. So he was kind of like
Yeah.
a king and it's kind of like a king and rook versus king and knight kind of dance there for a little bit on the king side. Then he forced black's knight, like you wisely pointed out, to take a stance. Do you want to be on e7 or do you want to be on c6? Like, what do you want to go after?
Yeah.
And so then once he got that breakthrough, he also was temporarily down a pawn, but he also knew when to go down the material. And good players, they know when to sack
Yeah.
back the material. And I think Eddie did a good job demonstrating. Um, he knew when to sack the file because now it's just rook against knight, and I have my pawn in s6. You have back rank problems. So very very good game from Eddie.
Yeah, right. And it's funny, right? Right after me talking about how the end game has not been Eddie's strongest point, and then he produces a really masterful conversion there. So, big ups to Eddie for finishing that off nicely. As suspected, Daniel gained a draw. And it's maybe I should be more careful with my language here. Not sure who gained the draw here, but it ended in a draw. Um, so, and then the last game we didn't look at was John Baker, cool dude, against Mitch Ross. Let's see how that went. So Scandinavian with Queen D6. So normal moves, and so White has a slight space advantage in the center. He's got the bishop pair, but Black has a solid position and should be doing okay. But now White is getting a bit of space on the queen side, and is probably looking to move the knight out of the way so he can get c4 in to help with the queen side attack. Okay. Again, along the same lines of trying to get the knight out of the way so you can push c4 and continue putting pressure on black's queen side. And he's able to do it with gain of tempo because now the h7 pawn's attacked, and now c4. So things are going like clockwork for white here.
Yes.
And this is always a difficult question. You might have to make a decision like this, say in a Catalan, where you have these pawns here, and you might want to play c5, but you do so understanding that you're also giving up the d5 square, and then you have to assess whether the d5 square is going to be an asset for black, and whether you're gaining more by giving him that square. In this situation, I think white's pieces are just so active that black really, and this is a good move, I think. The knight, having to spend a lot of energy deciding on what to do with that knight, is problematic. I remember I mentioned how when the person has the bishop pair, they get to choose when to relinquish the bishop pair if they get some sort of advantage from it. And so here, you're taking the knight off. First of all, in this position, what exactly is white's light square bishop attacking?
Nothing.
Right? Meanwhile, the knight is a major nuisance, right? So the knight is controlling b6, which would be a nice entry square for white. He's also controlling f4, and after the exchange, maybe white can get bishop f4 in. His bishop is definitely better than black's bishop, more active than black's bishop. And so, okay, well, so much for the activity part of the equation, but okay, you get the general feel. And now b6 is open, and so black is going to. I have some sympathy for bishop e3, but now you just no, I don't have sympathy for bishop e3. I mean, it's hard to create a good plan for black here, but maybe
I much preferred bringing the bishop back via like f8 and g7.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. That bishop f8, bishop g7 just seemed like a more natural plan, and in fact, maybe white is on the back foot after that. Because I guess I wasn't being careful about the moves, but it just turns out that after this exchange, the only person who has an exploitable weakness is white, that pawn on d4. And so yes, in this position, instead of that, bishop back. And if you can get a position where your pieces are attacking and his pieces are defending, and he's all tied down, now black can look to create a second attacking front, and maybe even play a pawn move like e5 at some moment, depending on how white goes about defending their d-pawn. So yeah, bishop f8 is just nah, I'm not liking that at all.
Yeah, I think black was definitely had a better position, and now white's probably slightly better because even after takes, if black ever tries to get that d4 pawn, you're taking on c6, and you have a nice pass pawn now.
Yep, and the exchange strengthens white's d pawn and also half opens the f file. Okay, granted, white can't take advantage of the f file immediately because of rook f5. Well, actually, if rook f5, then you have queen takes c6. So yeah, it's funny how the game has just turned, and now white's just better.
Yeah.
Because rook. Well, maybe it's not over yet.
Yeah, I like d5 because that was black doesn't play that. You don't eventually just lose.
Exactly. Black has to try to find some way of getting active.
Mm.
Huh. Hmm.
Ah, we have a
Would it have been
classic
better
double
to?
rooks on the seventh. Very classic
Yeah,
position.
our I think it's him. Our current and returning state champion, his handle on one of the online servers um, is is a tribute to this position. Pigs on the seventh. Um, yeah, these rooks become a mighty force. Now I don't know if John could have profited from checking on the seventh first, but maybe he felt he had enough time to capture and then come back to the seventh, so that the pawn doesn't become an issue later. And he's a bit low on time. So, okay, that seems really ambitious.
Unless I'm completely misinterpreting this position, it seems like it should be a draw.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too. Unless Black gets careless after this move. Oh, well, that still should be drawn.
Are you thinking he's gonna like push his H pawn up and kind of like a force mate on the back rank?
Yeah, but then again, Black still has the right to blunder here if he forgets about the rook check on the eighth rank, which he does.
Oh,
So yeah, okay, now it's done. I mean, it's not. It's winning, but Black can still create some inconveniences. But it seems like White knows what he's doing here.
slow conversion.
Yep,
You'll win eventually.
exactly. This is one of those positions where you should not be in a hurry, either in terms of the number of moves or the time on the clock, unless you're in time trouble. But in general, you want to take it slowly. You want to make sure you're moving your pawns carefully forward and they're never going beyond the supply lines, right? Another tricky moment, you don't want to allow a stalemate, which could happen after g6,
Yes,
right? So,
that was a good foresight to just sack the H pawn first.
yes, yeah. Wow. Okay. So that was a good performance by John there, and so I think we've covered all the games. Uh, Eddie, as featured player, did his featured status proud, winning his game. Um, and yeah, which game stood out to you?
Um, I would say yeah, it was the Eddie game, and I also liked the Dane Daniel Stenke game. I found that very
Yes.
interesting. The Dane. Maybe you could argue that was the most evenly matched game tonight in the sense that Dane went up a pawn, but even though he went up a pawn, Daniel had great resistance and he was able to salvage a draw out of that position. So
Yes.
I found those two games very, very interesting.
No, I think Daniel is going to be. I'm not sure if I've seen him lose yet. Just seems to never give up and has a keen awareness of when he has to get active to maintain it. Because if he doesn't go active with his king there, I think he's done, right?
Yes.
And yeah, cool. Well, sorry for moving the board around there. But okay, I think we're done for the evening. And it was pretty enjoyable pairing. Thanks, Michael.
Yes, thank you. That was a enjoyable commentary.
Cool. So I guess we'll sign off here. Anything else? I don't know if there's any club business that needs to be mentioned before we sign off.
No, don't believe so. Always have tournaments on Saturday, so people can come check out the club and get some chess in.
Oh, I'd be remiss if I didn't also congratulate you on a fine performance last weekend.
Oh, yes, the amateur close. Thank you. Yes, it's always a fun tournament to play in.
Cool. Very well done. All right. Well, have a good night.